Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Banquet Hall podcast. Can't speak English already. If this is your first time tuning into the podcast, make sure you follow the pod at Banquet Hall Pod. If you're here for Jessica's story, hopefully you enjoy the pod so much that you can stick around and hear some other stories on the podcast. But I'm blessed to be joined with Jessica. Jessica, how are you today?
I'm doing good right now. It's good. It's Friday. It's about to be movie night in a little couple hours here.
Ooh, movie night. Do you already know what movie y'all are going to be watching later?
Most likely something on Disney Plus. That's our thing. Or we might wind up watching the same thing we watched last movie night. It's kids' choice.
Kids' choice. We love it. And it's funny because when I was thinking of what icebreaker question to start this podcast with, I was interested in doing a movie-related icebreaker question. So that's a really good segue. And so the question that I have for you, and feel free to take your time because you're being put on the spot with it. But what is a movie that always makes you feel good? Like every time you watch it, it just makes you feel good. Or one of your favorite movies that you just enjoy watching?
Wow. So I don't watch a lot of movies anymore.
Mm.
I have no time, but I would say a movie that I really enjoy is so it's really off. It's Saving Private Ryan. I really enjoy that movie. I love anything with Tom Hanks. He gets me, like, he's just a great actor.
Yeah, Tom Hanks is such a phenomenal actor. And I think Saving Private Ryan is a great movie. I watch so many movies. I'm just so infatuated with film. So I could change my answer to that question at any time. But one movie that is like purely like a guilty pleasure movie, I think is one of the funniest movies of all time, is the Lego Batman movie. People think
Yeah.
People think it's weird because it's like it's a Lego movie, but I guarantee y'all, if y'all just give Lego Batman a chance, it is so
It's
funny. And
hilarious.
Batman's one of my favorite heroes. You've seen it before, so you
Of
like it
course,
too?
yeah. I got kids. I've seen like almost all those Lego movies.
I think the Lego movies are better movies than people saying. I think the dog agrees with the Lego Batman pick.
See, she's starting already. I told you.
What's your dog's name?
Her name is Bon Bon.
Bon Bon.
And she is 17 years old. So she's an oldie.
Well, Momo, we can welcome her to the podcast as well from the background. But let's go ahead and get started with the formal set of questions. The first question I always like to ask people is about where they're from, just because I feel like you can learn so much about a person based off of where they grew up, how they grew up. So Jessica, where are you from and how did that shape the person you have become so far?
So I am from San Diego. I've been here all my life. I have not left yet. And how that has shaped me is I feel like because we're so diverse, so it has helped me be almost more balanced than some other places that I have seen or visited. My first neighborhood, I grew up in Paradise Hills.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where that is?
Yeah, I do know.
Okay. Like Skyline Hills, Paradise Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my first neighborhood. And I think that had a lot of diversity to it that not a lot of people know if they didn't grow up there. Um, and now the second half of my life, I grew up in Rancho San Diego, which is next to Queen Maca College. And it has become very diverse as well, but it's also in a way out there, like nature-like. So that has helped shaped who I am now. Coming back home, I live with my parents. So it's just helping me become more into myself and find out who I am.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I think that when we grow up in diverse neighborhoods, diverse communities, you learn so much about yourself based off of how you're similar to people that you're around, how you're different than other people you're around. And I think that especially when you're in like a college community or a college setting, you're introduced to so many different people too. And if I'm not mistaken, we first crossed paths at that Young, Gifted, and Black event at Queen Mecca College, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, shout out to that was a great event. Shout out to Pascal. who, if y'all don't know, has an episode on the pod as well. But yeah, I think that what I love about doing this podcast is that poetry and artists connected me with so many people in so many different ways. Like I just happened to decide to support Pascal that day, happened to end up hosting the open mic with her and hearing so many dope performers perform. And one thing I noticed about you and when you're performing and when you're on the sidelines, you're really cheering other people on. So I could tell that art is something that was really, really important for you. And you're really supportive of that community. You're always engaging and liking posts that we share on like the Black Expression page or the podcast page. So definitely appreciate your support of the arts. And as an artist yourself, I wanted to begin our conversation asking you, how do you define yourself as an artist? Because I know I heard you do poetry, but I know there's a lot more facets to who you are as an artist. So how do you define yourself as an artist?
So I actually don't know. I don't consider myself an artist, but I think more of a creator. And I'm not talking about like, like how it is now with influence and all that. I like to create. I use these tools, these creative tools, in a way to either make a statement or make a like do it for a purpose or do it just because I love it. Yeah, I don't consider myself an artist. I have an older brother and he's definitely an artist. He always says it all the time. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm more of a creator.
Okay, that's definitely fair. And I think when I used to ask this question, I actually had it as artist or creative. So that's a good show note for myself to include that there. But what about some of the types of things that you create then within your creative like toolkit? What are some things you like to create?
So I like to write for one. I I love writing. It and it's not just poetry, but also academically. Um,
Mm.
I remember back in middle school, high school, I used to be one of the persons excited to write essays. Like I'll be like, yes. Um, and I like to do for photography, so taking pictures, capturing moments, and creating things with my hands. So I also crochet. I like to sew.
Mm.
I think what makes me more of a creator is when I use like my mind, like critical thinking to create something, even if I don't have anything, I can create it.
Mm.
I think that's something that ties back to my native roots of just wanting to make something myself if I
Mm.
don't have it available. Just constantly creating. I
Mm.
also
Yeah.
created children. uh, yeah, it's constantly creating. That's the goal.
Mm. And when you talk about like your native roots, what part of your identities that are native to you are like important to you? Like when you think about your creativity and getting back to those roots, what part of your identity do you like to make sure is shown at the forefront of that?
Compared to, well, to connection to my native, I think just being authentic, being when I say native, I think of being in a time when you're connected to the natural world, like
Mm.
before all this. When like my ancestors, they would create everything, there was no technology. Um, yeah, it's just being like one with yourself
Mm.
and things like that. I'm not sure if I answered that
Oh no,
question.
I definitely think that that's a solid answer to that because I think that so often with the social media age that we're in, we're everything's so rapid fire, it's rapidly available. We have AI, we have Chat GPT that's just making things, and we've gotten away from knowing how to create things ourselves with using our two hands or using our mind. And I definitely identified with being a person who loves writing, whether it's academically, creatively. I'm always that weird person who's ready to write the essay. Like I'd much rather write the essay, whereas I had friends in college they would hate having to write like a 3 to 5 page paper. I'm like, oh, I can get this done like that.
Hmm.
It's nothing to me. When you think about your academic writing, let's start there. Are you currently taking like creative or writing classes at Cuyamaca, or what type of academic writing do you feel like you are most interested in?
So history, for sure.
History.
History, yeah. I love not only learning about history, but writing about it. I feel like sometimes, and I get creative with it, even though it's supposed to be academic. Sometimes I'll like start um almost like I throw myself into the events, the historical event, and like write as if I'm the person. I've done that
Mm.
and gotten away with it. But right now, the classes I'm taking are biology, so it's not uh it's a little different, and I'm also taking statistics, so it's a little more
Mm.
mathematical type writing. But
Got
I
it.
try to have fun with it.
That's good that you're still able to find some fun with it. Was there a particular like historical thing that you wrote about academically that you enjoyed a lot, like putting yourself into the shoes of a character or a person in a historical time period, or maybe a part of history that you would love to write more about?
I have a couple events throughout my life that I've written about and I've actually enjoyed. One, not the easiest time to talk about, but World War II.
Mm,
Um, I liked writing about the those events, and then also with the time where the Spanish came, the conquest. I like to write about that. Uh, and that's one thing I have to say that I'm grateful for right now as a student, a native student, is I'm so glad that there's ethnic studies now, and that it's
mm,
actually a requirement because when I went back to school, when I actually finally made the decision to even look into going back to school, I saw Queen Maka that they had this program, ethnic studies, and I was like, this is my sign, because not only did I learn about history, but I learned about my history that I never found out growing up, um, like in high school, none of that. So it really empowered me, even though it was hard to find these things out. It empowered me, and it actually made me a better writer and want to
mm,
keep going with it. And now I want to be a professor and teach the same subject so I can do this. Hopefully that it does the same to other students, future students.
I love that. So, in your future, one of your dreams is to be an ethnic studies professor.
Yes, yes, back at Queen Maka. That's the goal.
Oh, well, definitely want to make sure we manifest that for you on the podcast. I think it's so good to be able to give back to communities that are so important in our own upbringing. Because I know when I was taking classes at UC San Diego, that was the first time I got exposed to ethnic studies classes, African American studies classes. And I think once you're in that classroom setting and you're reading books and having lesson plans that are very tailored to parts of your identity, it really starts to highlight how, like you said, growing up, you don't really get to read a lot about your specific cultural history or the cultural histories of cultures that are similar to yours. And so I'm so happy that you found a love for ethnic studies, and can't wait till you're back on this podcast as a professor talking about your time with the students. And so, getting into kind of more creative writing with regards to poetry, as I mentioned, the first day that we met was performing at a Young Gifted and Black open mic. When do you remember first starting writing poetry? Like, do you remember how you got your start with poetry? If so, how was that?
So I didn't begin writing poetry until I think last year.
Oh, wow.
Um, but it started out with uh, writing short story in middle school. Um, Before that, I really didn't have no interest in writing. I didn't know I had a gift until I wrote a really atypical short story. My story really stood out, and my teacher told me, and he said he really enjoyed it, and he told me to keep writing, and I kept writing ever since. It kind of stopped a little bit I would say like a decade. Hold on, my son, huh?
Do you know what my slime might be?
I don't. Just be over there, please. Just give me a little bit. Um, I stopped writing for about a decade. Um, I was in a really bad relationship, so I was at really big halt in my life. And last year, I started letting out those feelings, and that's when I began writing. And then I started going to the open mics.
What do you feel gave you the courage to get up there and share your poetry? Do you feel like you were usually an outgoing, extroverted person, or did it take a little bit of extra something to get up there and share those words with the audience?
Yeah, growing up, um, I never really cared what anyone thought of me. Um, uh, even though I was actually, picked on more by my family than anything.
Mm,
But I think that gave me like a layer, right? Like a armor in a way. So as I grew up, I never really cared what anyone else thought of me. So when I got out of that bad relationship and I was, I guess, me again, it's like I almost like evolved. And so it was pretty easy for me to get on the mic. It was just a matter of having a babysitter and getting on the mic.
and I know that family is very important to you within your writing, but just as well as the overall individual. What is that creative process like for you when you're writing these poems and just trying to center your family and your culture? Like, do you have a certain routine that you like to write in? What's the ambiance when you're typically writing these pieces?
I will be honest, it's very on the go. I am literally, I could be putting my daughter to sleep and I'm writing with my other hand. So yeah, I'm having to juggle a lot. Um, Ideally though, I haven't done it in a while, but I was doing it a lot, is when I would take my dogs on a night walk, that's when I would do a lot of the writing while listening to music.
Mm,
But even then, it's still very on the go. Because it's not necessarily I'm writing poetry, it's just more I'm writing my thoughts down
mhm.
before they get away from me.
Yeah, I've definitely been there. So my first poetry book I ever came out with, I entitled it Five South because most of the ideas for those poems came when I was on the freeway. I'm from Los Angeles, so I would go home a lot during college and I would be driving to LA or back from LA and I would have a random thought of something. I'm like, ooh, I want to capture this thought. And so I'd use my voice notes, or if I'm at a red light, I'll type something real quick, and it's just amazing to me how much beautiful art can come from those fleeting thoughts and just being able to capture just a sentence or a metaphor or even sometimes a word or a feeling and turn it into something beautiful. And I know you mentioned that sometimes when you're writing on the go or you're listening to music, is there a specific type of music that you feel influences you creatively or gets you more in that writing zone, or is it just whatever you're listening to at the time?
Yeah, usually it depends. But usually I listen to Dakota Bear, which he's like a rap artist, and he's a Native American rap artist.
Mm,
And a lot of what he raps is family, is, native roots and trying to get up onto the top, with all of that um, from the history and all that, and just trying to have equality.
mm.
And I do listen to a lot more rap. I listen to Eminem as well. And sometimes if I'm in the mood, I'll listen to some like old love songs just to, I don't know, I guess in a way of taking care of myself, like kind of self-care.
Mm. I love that. I feel like this next book I'm currently working on, love songs are the theme of a lot of the writing sessions right now. Like I'm rediscovering a lot of older love songs that I've fallen in love with before. And it's funny you mentioned Eminem. Eminem is a big inspiration for me sometimes when I'm writing, just because I know Eminem is a very polarizing figure, and a lot of people hate Eminem. A lot of people love Eminem.
Mhm.
But I think just when I really started listening to his lyrics and how he's able to the wordplay, the metaphors, the double and triple entendres, it just blows my mind. I'm like, I want to write. I want to write. He just makes me want to write so much. So that's really cool that you're also a fan of the real Slim Shady.
Oh yeah, I think I was a fan since I was a child. I remember I shouldn't have been listening to his album, but I remember when I listened to the same thing, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, like how? Like, um, and he's actually the first book report I wrote about. I wrote a book.
Wow.
We are supposed to do a historical like figure. I wrote about Eminem. I was so proud of it too. I wish I kept it. It was adorable.
Oh, that would be amazing if you still had that. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, he is a historical figure. So
Mhm.
that's really cool that he was a subject of your book report. I wonder, do kids still do book reports? Is that like something that
They
is done?
do. They do.
Okay. That's good to know because I know the younger generation gets uh, a lot of like mess talked about them when they aren't like at a certain reading level. So I'm happy that the schools are still making them do book reports. Would you want your children to also do a book report on Eminem, or would you want them to do something different?
Um, I don't know. Eminem, I mean, if they, listen to the blurred version. But yeah, I would love it if my children see, my parents were different. They're like, don't listen to that, don't do this and that. I feel like if my son finds someone he likes as a musician and he really connects with them, then yes, by all means, even if they do say bad words, sometimes you gotta, say some bad words.
Hey, that's true. Like sometimes life just has bad words thrown at you. Another thing that you mentioned was that you like to take pictures, you do photography, and that's something else I learned about you when I was on your website preparing for this interview. When did you first start doing photography? What made you want to start?
So this happened, I started taking pictures like in middle school. And I remember the first shot I took
Mm.
that I even looked at it and I was like amazed. I was being like a hooligan in the back of chemistry class, sitting like on the counter, and I had my camera very sneakily. You're not supposed to have that at school. And I took a picture of my chucks, black and white. And when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, it's actually good. And so I went from there and I started just taking pictures about like anything, but also waiting for the right picture, like
Mm.
capture. And I think that's what kind of fueled me more into photography is I love to capture moments. I'm not with the whole pose uh, type photography. I want to just wait and get that picture, that moment.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. I feel like photography is something that I want to get into just because I catch myself taking more pictures on my phone of just moments, whether I'm taking a walk and just see a nice flower or I'm passing like a certain scene and I'm like, oh, this will make like a nice frame for a picture. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of too many pose pictures. Like obviously there's a time and place for post pictures, but I love catching people off guard or just when they're having a nice laugh and just
Mhm.
catching those real life moments because I feel like that really makes like the art behind the picture and there's a story behind that picture that you're taking. And that's cool that you remember the first shot that you've taken. Do you still find yourself taking pictures pretty often, or what's that like for you right now within the many busy things you have going on in your life?
Yeah, I just got into it. So I've always been into film, and then Canon cameras. I
Mm,
just finally was able to have enough money to buy a Nikon, like my first one, um, digital, DSLR. Uh, at first I'm like, I don't wanna like I love film, but it it helps because do have to be so on the go. Like I don't have time for film yet. So it has given me a passion again to take photos. There's one person in particular that I've been really liking to photograph. She has such energy when she speaks.
mm.
I'll shout out to her right now, Karma. I love taking pictures of her. And also they also appreciate it, when I capture those moments. So I think having the photographer and taking photos is just another way to capture these moments and these events.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure I was talking to Monet about it on the podcast, who's another photographer. And we were discussing just like what you mentioned, like somebody has a certain energy and being able to capture that essence and show people parts of themselves that maybe they don't always see. I think photography is a way that you can really affirm somebody and grow closer to someone when you take a picture of their essence that you're capturing. So I'm happy that you are at those events and documenting these things because I also think it's important for us to be able to document all these different wonderful things we're doing in community and having these moments to look back on and show people the history of a lot of these things. Because as we talked about earlier, a lot of time as Black and Brown people, like our history is erased a lot. So being able to have these moments and capture these moments, like I think often about 10, 15 years from now, being able to tell people like, yeah, like I was at Black Expression. Something else that I learned about you when I was on your website was about this club called the Single Mamas Club, which on your website you have as a group for women who are single mothers where they can share their words, experiences, thoughts, vent, get peer support, and more. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about like what girl your role in Single Mamas Club, why the club is important, what you love about being a part of the club?
Yeah, so I created Single Mamas Club because I am a single mother and I feel like I give um, a certain perspective that I don't really relate to anyone else in my life. And I really wanted to give a space and create a space where other women, maybe who felt like me, could come together and share or vent, um, just talk to each other, get united in a way. And also, I created Single Mamas Club because I wanted to bring awareness to this issue because it's a social economic issue. The statistics alone are mind blowing. Like, 80% of the single parent household are single mothers. That's a big,
Mm,
big like percentage. And yeah, I just want to create something, and I hope that even though not a lot of people have shown up, which is okay. It's just starting out. I still want to present it and make sure that people know, or single mothers know, that it's available for them.
mm. And so, if I was a single mom listening to this, or if I'm listening to this podcast and know a single mom, how can people get involved or how can people support this club?
Yeah, it definitely sharing it. I post a lot. I would say maybe like once or twice in the month about it. Just usually around the time when I would have the Zoom meeting, which is going to be once a month. And I always let them know, like, you can find the link on my website, usually through my Instagram, where I have my link tree, where you can sign up on my website, or I always say you can just message me and I'll give you the information. And anyone else who wants to support, just share my clips, share the information, pass it on.
Absolutely. I was just talking to another artist about this, how important it is for people to share the content that they truly want to support. I think, especially as creatives, as artists that are trying to grow platforms, sometimes a single share gets so much accomplished, like getting the content, even if it isn't for you listening to this podcast, maybe somebody you know that you follow is looking for a single mamas club or is looking for a space that they can be involved with. So definitely encourage folks to get involved, to share, and just to amplify such an important resource. And that 80% statistic, I was not aware of that. I figured the statistic was skewed in somewhat, but yeah, 80%, that's significant.
Yeah, it's wild. I had communications last year, and I decided to do a speech about being a single mother. And when I did the research, I was like, holy crap, that is so large. And that was a pretty recent statistic. It was like only maybe a year or two ago.
Mm. I've had a few different mothers on the podcast, and I always make sure to leave space on the pod to be able to ask a question with regards to motherhood, because I think being a mother is part being a superhero. What has motherhood taught you, being a mom of your children? What has that taught you?
Oof, it's taught me so much.
Some
uh,
highlights.
yeah, love is the most like important thing, most powerful thing motherhood has taught me. I did not necessarily I had tough love growing up. So I didn't want to be a mother. I didn't really want to have a relationship because there was a lot of pain in my childhood. But the moment I became a mom, like the moment I found out, it changed me. I feel like it changed almost my biology in a way.
Mm,
'Cause all of a sudden, I feel I have to live, I have to take care of someone else. And now being in the space that I am now, where I am, I have my freedom back. I can, I'm still working hard to take care of my family on my own, but I am so grateful to have them in my life because they give me purpose. And even my animals, I consider them my children. Uh, and yeah, it's just, they keep me going. Motherhood, if I could, oh, I had this conversation with my coworker. Um, we were talking about moms and how it's hard to be a mom nowadays. Like how hard it is for anyone to be a stay-at-home mom. And I told her if I could, I would love to just be a mom. Like
mm.
I wish I didn't have to juggle everything else. I wish I could just be a mom.
Yeah, I feel like I talked to so many friends about this and coworkers. Just capitalism has us going on this go, 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 and we're trying to find a way to get the bills paid or trying to find a way to do the next thing. And in reality, I would just love to be able to connect with people, like to go to open mics, to connect with people, to just spend time with people you care about. So thank you for sharing that, because I definitely think a lot of listeners will resonate with that. And you mentioned your animals being your children. People watching the video may notice that you have a friend in your lap right now. What's the cat's name?
Her name is Whiskey. She's always on me. She's so yeah, like every time she reminds it's almost like my daughter. Like as soon as I'm not looking or like I have like a second where I'm not on top of things, they like jump on me and like but in a loving way, you know. So yeah, Whiskey's very attached to me. And I'm very attached to her. I have two dogs. You heard the one, the loud one. And I have two cats, so she's one of the two.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I could see the reflection of the other cat in
oh
the
yeah,
window
over
in the
there, yeah,
background.
licking herself. Yeah. But yeah, and they are family. It so we all live here with my parents, so it's very busy, very
Mm.
an animal house, wild house. Um, and I know that's something they don't really understand. You know, they don't understand when I say that my animals are also like my family. But it's because I've had them all since they were babies.
Mm.
So, and my oldest, she's 17, so I've had her since I was like 16.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I mean, I've always had a deep connection to animals anyways. But yeah, this is my family.
No, I love that so much. Animals play such a important role in our environment, in our world, because at the end of the day, there are other living beings that we're sharing this world with. And like you said, if you grow up with the animals since you're a teenager, there's just such a firm bond that's cemented. And one of my prior poetry books, there was a section in it that I wrote right after my dog had died that I had since I was 10 years old. And I don't think anything can prepare you for that. And I think that just those moments is when I really understood like just how close you can feel with an animal that doesn't even speak your language. Like sometimes the animal obviously understands you, but it's not like y'all are having a full blown conversation here and there.
No, and you speak about having that connection. I did a speech on animal communication, and it's a whole nother level. Um, but one thing that animals do communicate that maybe not a lot of people understand is love.
Hmm.
And why they do that is because biologically, um, they are made to take care of their offspring. And when you take care of, another person or another animal or your offspring, love, manifests. And it's just, yeah, they're amazing. Animals are amazing.
Yeah, shout out to the animals. And I'm sure if I include a shot of your cat in the video, we'll probably get 1,000 views on YouTube because everybody
Oh
loves
my God.
videos that have cats in them.
That is so true. One time, like I did a single mamas club, like little clip, and I put my cat in it. It got way more views than just me talking. I was like, okay, this is the way.
The true stars are the cats and the dogs of the group.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm definitely enjoying our conversation thus far. I want to get to the tail half of our questions that we have planned. So next question, this is a question I've started adding just because I'm so interested in where people find their peace. And so, Jessica, the question I have for you is, what is your Zen place? So either a physical place or just a set of circumstances that bring you to a peaceful state of mind. What's your Zen place?
So my Zen place is anywhere away from the city where I don't hear no cars, I don't hear no people. All I see and hear is animals and trees and grass and clear sky. And also just being alone with my children or being
Mm,
alone with my animals. Sometimes that's hard to do when I live with my parents, like I live with someone else. So in those rare times, like when I either take all of us, like the whole gang, out of the city, or just kind of find a little secluded spot where I could just be with them, and I can actually just sit and watch them and be in peace and not have to feel like, someone like I have to look out for myself or look out for them. I can just be in peace with them.
mm. Yeah, getting away from the city is definitely something that I feel like every time I do it, I appreciate it more and more because I grew up in Los Angeles, been living in San Diego the last several years, and these are two giant cities in comparison to parts of the country where you don't get that city life. And I think back to times where I've been in like more rural areas or down in the South, and I realize just how quiet it is. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is weird. Even where I live now, it's quieter than what I grew up with. I grew up down the street from LAX airport, so literally every 10
Mm.
minutes there's a jumbo jet just flying over the backyard. So I'm just used to there's always being loud sound. And then coming to San Diego and the parts of San Diego I've had the opportunity to live in, they've been quiet areas. And so for a while it was kind of hard to sleep even because like, where's the noise? Like it's just so
Mhm.
quiet. But I'm definitely overdue for getting in nature and just being away from the city. Like I think that brings just a certain peace and brings you to that moment, going back to moments where yeah, everything you have right now is just the birds that are chirping or the insects that you're hearing or the sound of the wind in the trees. So
Mhm.
definitely make me want to go outside right now.
Yeah, it's like a symphony, you know.
Mm,
It's I am thinking about I have to go back. It's like 2 hours away from the city, and we stayed there for like the weekend, and um I woke up early before anyone else, just right when the sun is about to come out, and just hearing nothing but animals was like amazing.
mm.
It brought a tear to my eye because I was like, man, I wish I could just wake up like this every day.
Would definitely be a blessing. Definitely. Who are some people in your life that inspire you and or influence you? And this could be people that you actually know, celebrities, people you don't know, historical figures. Just who are some of your inspirations and influences? And I don't feel the need to name every single person, of course, just however many come to mind.
Yeah, so my family for sure. My little family. Also the community at Queen Maka College. They have been very supportive and they encourage me and inspire me to keep going. My friends, I'm lucky enough to have really, really great best friends who have been my friends since middle school. So we've been together a long time. And one particular person that influences me right now, like on the daily, is Dakota Bear. So that rap artist.
Mhm.
Um, I listen to his music pretty much every day, especially when I
Mhm.
run or work out or just am outside. On it, you know what? I listen to him all the time. Like I am, and so much so because now my son is starting to listen to him. And but it's not just his music; it's his whole movement. He he is also doing a clothing line, which I'm wearing the shirt. It's called Land Back. The shirt says Land Back. It's called Decolonial Clothing Company.
Mhm.
So it's his music, it's his clothes, it's like the whole movement of, you know, indigenous movement.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I definitely want to check out the clothing, want to check out the music, because I think more and more as we move as a society into this place where everybody is putting content out and everybody's trying to be the best rapper, the best musician, something that I've tried to prioritize more and more is investing in people as holistic beings and their holistic brand. Like I want to listen to people who are for the same causes that I'm interested in, people who have a story to tell that I resonate with. Which is why whenever people ask me about the latest so and so artist, I'm just so unplugged from like what everybody's listening
Mhm.
to that I'm like, no, I've literally never heard that song before. I've never heard that name before, seen that name before. Because I think the Double XL freshman list came out with rappers, and I looked at the names, like I don't know a single one of these rappers on
I'm
this
the
list
same way.
because yeah, it's like I know who I listen to, and that's just what I got right now. Outside of what we've discussed, what else do people need to know about Jessica to get a complete picture of who you are?
um, well, we might have already discussed this. But I'm trying to navigate this life as best as I can, as anyone else. Um, Something not necessarily unique, but I'm coming from not only a perspective of a single mom, a woman healing, but also a native uh person. And so sometimes it's like almost triple layered difficult, you know,
Mm,
to try to live. But also all those things also come together and give me strength to keep going. Another thing I want other people to know is, despite all the pain that I've gone through and trauma, I feel like I was tested in a way and I made it out. And even though I received tough love growing up, now that I kind of pieced everything together, I feel like I was actually born with love. And that's
mm,
something that I want to keep uh, representing is love. Love is power. Love is strength.
mm. I love that. Where can people find you online? How can people support you if they want to engage with you, follow your story, support your poetry? How can people support you and find you?
The best way to find me is Instagram. And on there, I have the link to my link tree in my bio. That would be the best bet.
And so we'll make sure the Instagram is up for video listeners, but for the audio listeners, you mind saying what the tag is for your Instagram?
Yeah, it's Jessica Bahena 1234.
Jessica Bahena 1234.
My name might be difficult to spell.
I'm sure we have some smart listeners, I hope, but
I'll figure it out.
JESSICABAHENA 123. Anything, I know we had a couple shout outs and some manifestations for being a professor in the future, but anything else you want to plug, shout out, or manifest on this podcast episode? Any books you
Um,
got that you're working on yet?
I'm working on books, but nothing nothing solid yet. That might have to take a while. Um, I just want to shout out to, my family, my friends. I'll say their names so because they watch my stuff. Eleni, Elizabeth, Jamard, Ryan, those big supporters of mine. I got a shout out to Cuyamaca College because they are the best school. Shout out to Dakota Bear and Decolonial Clothing. And shout out to you for what you're doing
Thank
because
you.
this is amazing. Like when you sent me that document, just tell me how it's gonna go. I was like, wow, this is legit. Like you do your research. This is like amazing what you're doing. I'm all for it.
I definitely appreciate and receive that affirmation. Yeah, the rationale behind the podcast is that I want to make sure that guests know I'm taking them serious because I think that too often, especially as people of color, sometimes our stories don't get the same amount of attention as other stories. And so when I'm inviting someone to the podcast, I want them to get that celebrity treatment. Like I want people at the Banquet Hall to feel like they are important enough for me to do research. Like I'm going on websites. I do LinkedIn sometimes. I go on Instagram deep dives. I just want to make sure that people know, like, no, I'm serious about getting your story out there. And I have definitely enjoyed this episode, enjoyed getting to know you on a deeper level because obviously we've only crossed paths a couple of times in life thus far, many more times to come, especially tomorrow. But it's always good to just sit and talk with people because I think we've kind of lost that as a society. We don't have hour-long conversations with people anymore.
Yeah.
So my podcast is a way for me to just sit and talk with human beings because I live by myself. So sometimes I'll just be sitting here. I'm like, you know what? Why not just spark up a conversation? And the podcast gives me that opportunity. And that's a good segue into our tech takeaways corner. What are some takeaways from this episode for you? So what are you taking away from this episode? And what do you hope that people listening are taking away with them?
Um, I don't know what I'm taking away from this other than I'm gonna watch your podcast more. It's a little difficult. Some of them are like an hour long, but I do my best before, I crash out. Um, and yeah, I want to keep supporting this, so I'll keep following you and listening and watching your podcast. Other people, what they could take away from this is, I don't know, the same thing. I don't know. When I got to this, I was like, I don't even know what I'm gonna say for this. Um, but yeah, this has been great. I love this. So, and I think just like you were saying, like it's just having a conversation with someone. It's fun. Like it's fun. I miss it. So I hope you have me back so I can, chat for another hour.
Oh yeah, would love to have you back. And I think the fact that the episode's a good episode, that's a great takeaway for the listeners. I always tell the listeners we give them 5-star content, so they got to leave a 5-star rating. I think what I'm taking away from this episode is the importance of love. Like I think love came up a lot in our conversation, and um, we're recording this a few days before Valentine's Day, so love is in the air. Um, but I think just thinking through like love in terms of person to person interactions, the music we listen to, the people, the animals in our lives, the nature that we're within, the words we're creating. I hope the listeners listen to this podcast and want to just engage with whatever they love. I think love is the theme of the episode. And then the last question to close out the podcast is just a recommendation corner. I think you already gave one really good recommendation, but in case there are anything else you want to recommend in terms of books, podcasts, movies, songs, just tell listeners anything you think our listeners should tune into to either learn more about who you are or just something that you think is good and more people should check out.
Okay. Before I answer that, I want to say you did a really good job at concluding the takeaway better than
Well,
me.
thank you.
Now I see what it was supposed to be. What I would recommend, I don't know if anyone's really going to relate to it, but I recommend anyone to try to go to a powwow. And it could be out of someone's like comfort zone. I go to them quite often, and I always recommend them because it's not, if you haven't been to one, you might not know how it is, but it's very supportive, it's very welcoming, very spiritual. And anyone can go, it's open to the public. I know when I go, I bring my kids and I just feel connected. I'm not, part of a tribe, or I'm not Native American, like in that way. I still feel it. I feel the energy. It's powerful.
It's a fantastic recommendation. I have not yet been to a powwow, but I definitely have it on the list of things I need to do. At UCSD, our Intertribal Resource Center and our Native American Student Association, they put together a powwow every year, and people always talk about just how beautiful of an event it is. The food, the music, the dancing, and it's just I love our brown folks. Like I love just rich cultures because it's just so beautiful to watch people celebrating in a way that's meaningful historically and culturally for them.
Yeah. Can I recommend a website where you can actually find information?
Yeah, go for it.
It's really easy. It's called powwows.com.
Powwows.com. Thank you for that. So yeah, powwows.com. Find a powwow near you. And I just went on the website. You can search by state. You can search by where you at. So definitely check out those calendars and support the land that we're on. I also encourage folks to, if you don't know, find out whose land you are on. There's a number of different websites you can use to figure out whose land you're on. In the part of San Diego that we're recording from, this is Kumeyaay territory. So just highly encourage folks to show respect and reverence for the land that we take up, the spaces that we take up, and kind of some other theme of the episode. Just learn the real rich history of where we are, because it's so important for our survival as people to affirm and respect all the wonderful cultures that are in this territory that we're in.
Thank you for that summary. That's beautiful.
Thank you, of course. Jessica, it's been a blast chatting with you on this podcast. Definitely enjoy getting to know more about you, more about your story. Listeners, hope y'all enjoyed this conversation. Once again, if y'all haven't tuned into the Banquet Hall before, make sure you follow the podcast on socials at Banquet Hall Pod. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure you leave a 5-star rating, like, subscribe, follow, all the good things influencers tell people to do. But seriously, these stories that we have on this podcast are important for everyone to hear. So I want to make sure that we're giving people the love and the flowers that they deserve. And hope y'all enjoyed the episode. Make sure y'all leave comments, and we'll tune in next time. Jessica, thank you for your time, and I hope the rest of your evening is wonderful as well.
Thank you.